calm down, Maureen. Okay. With you. I'll be right there. Is that a siren? It wasn't me. I would like to ask, with your permission, if you're okay, is it okay if I ask my husband to pray us in? You're right. We ran out of time because I was going to ask, do you have any questions for Max? Because he could tell you all my secrets.
There is that.
That's a tough one.
So I'm going to stand about this far back because I've got a little bit of a big voice, so I'm sorry about that. Okay, no, I'm not. All right, everyone, if you will go ahead and close your eyes, take a nice deep breath. And know with me that in this moment, we get to let everything in our life go. Breathe in and breathe out. Know with me that in this moment, we sit with the opportunity of learning something new, letting go of the past, and ushering in newness, peacefulness, joy, learning. And in this moment, we get to begin the transformation process as we hear, learn, and listen in this workshop. So I know this is true for me, and because I know this is true for me, I know it's true for everyone in this room. So I am going to let this word go out into the ethers and become a part of the action of the law, knowing that this is good, this is whole, this is perfect, and this is complete. And so it is.
So it is. Thank you, beloved. Thank you, Max. Okay, so I'm back. Full disclosure, this is a brand new workshop that I put together, and it's supposed to be a 7-week workshop. So, how much time you got? No, I'm kidding. So you'll be home before Thanksgiving. So, no, so I took one of, it's about 7 different invitations, and it's based on the book, The Divine Heart, by Colette Lafia. And I fell in love with the book, right, because the very beginning of it, she called us to this aspect of learning to love. And that learning to love is our true mission. And she's not a Science of Mind author, but I thought that was so in line with what we teach. And then I started reading, and she's got these 7 different invitations that Spirit Source is inviting us to, so that we can cultivate a divine heart. So then I think I got through like the 5th week of the workshop, and I was talking with my colleagues who have been, of course, my prayer partners praying me up, and they said, are you really going to try to fit a 7-week workshop? How much time did they give you? 90 minutes. And she said, why aren't you just picking one? And I went, because I'm not as smart as you. So I ended up picking the one that I thought was so resonant, so profound for me. And I ended up picking the one that was about expansiveness, which is really about trusting our heart's capacity. Trusting our heart's capacity. And she wrote the book in 2021, which was an amazing time, right? And she wrote it talking about the effects of the pandemic on all of us, right? The social distancing, the constant debate, mask, no mask, like I have to wear a mask if I'm here, but apparently I can't catch COVID if I'm eating in a restaurant. So there was a lot, and then it was like, well, how are we as religious scientists using our teaching, right, our principle? Because I kept saying from the get-go, I'm not having that. I'm just not. And I haven't had it. So, vax, non-vax, which became a political hotbed. And I don't care. I mean, I care about people, and I want people to be healthy, but whatever happened to my body, my choice, right? Oh, but not that. Come on. So she also talked about the isolation of it, right? That experience of isolation. I shared in some of the meetings I was in yesterday that there was a Pew Research study, and I believe the number was 96% of clergy, and this was mainstream clergy. They weren't talking about Science of Mind, because for some reason we're not mainstream yet. 96% contemplated leaving their pulpits. And amongst clergy, there was a startling increase in alcoholism, other addictions, divorce, and mostly pandemic related. So I started calling it the damn-demic. So I'm gonna move these two, because they keep bumping them. And then lastly, she really talked about the collective grief. And regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, when I watched the National Mall and all of the candles lined up as a representation of millions of lives that were lost, it was the first time that I let go. It was the first time that I sat in my living room and sobbed. Because I don't think I took the time to grieve almost losing my sister, to grieve losing my brother, to grieve our dog. We had a little Yorkie, and we lost him. And I didn't take the time because there wasn't any time. When you're trying to minister to the collective grief of a community and the constant pivot. It was, and I was grateful, to be honest, that I had my community, because it was, let me watch my brother's memorial service on FaceTime, because it was in New York and I couldn't get there, right? And then go back to work, right? Let me go back to planning Sunday service and to making sure that, the Zoom is set up for this class or that class, right? All of the things that we do to keep our community connected. And so reading her book, I loved that she described it. She said it's as if we were living with a sadness that never seemed to go away. It was this undercurrent. And sometimes I still feel it a little bit, but that's because of things that have gone on, personally. Our family has taken a big hit in the last couple of years. And she said it not only did it not seem to go away, but it was accumulating like dust and grime on the windows of our life. And so I decided, well, I just want to talk about that and bring some spiritual Windex to this. I forgot my prop. I was going to have spiritual Windex, But on the other hand, she talked about solitude as a gift. And I've heard a couple of people say that, that in the beginning, excuse me, I've talked so much today, that in the beginning, it was a little bit tough for extroverts, especially, hello. But then it got to be, I made peace with it, and it was comfortable, it was beautiful because do any of you know or remember Reverend Sharon Dunn? She's been my prayer partner since 2008. And when she knew that we lost our puppy, she knew Moody, she called me 3 weeks later and said, I found a dog for you, you have to go tonight. And I was like, girl, what? And she said, no, I found this dog. And it's a Maltipoo, and it's a puppy, and they don't live far from you. And I even negotiated the price. I got them to lower the price, and I told them that you'd be there tonight before 6. He walked in the door from work, and I said, we have to go look at a dog. And he said, what? I said, I know. I said, I don't think I want the dog, but we have to go look at it because it's Sharon, and I do what she tells me, most times. She does what I tell her, by the way, which is why she's married now. And if you want to manifest a partner, hit me up. So, not hit me up, not in that context. Call me. I'll pray with you. We'll work on that. I'm spoken for. But, so then you go, and I'm thinking, I'm just going to look at this dog and leave. Right. But her wisdom was beautiful, and so during this time of pandemic, once she had gotten all her shots and stuff, there was some beauty in being able to put like her little harness on and go out into the streets. There was no traffic. There was no traffic. And in the beginning, I thought that was spooky, like, ooh. But then it was like, oh, this is cool. I can just walk wherever I want. It was kind of awesome, right? So Thomas Merton, and has anybody ever heard of Thomas Merton? Of course, he's an American Trappist monk. He's a scholar, a writer, a theologian. He's a mystic, he's a poet, he's a social activist, which I love. But he also is a comparative religion scholar. That was one thing I didn't know. But he said, solitude's purpose is to help you not only love God, but also people. That is the purpose of solitude, to help you not only love God, but to also love people. So I want to take a minute with you, just like 2 minutes, to go into just some quiet, reflective meditation. Can we do that? Just whatever, if you want to lay on the floor, by the way, I don't care, you take your shoes off. This is the family talk now. We're done with the formal stuff. So however you want to get comfortable, just please try not to go to sleep on me, because I do have a small ego, a little bit of ego. So whatever position, but feel yourself supported by your chair, put your feet on the floor, and take a deep breath. I'm just going to give you a couple of things to consider, to take into contemplation as we get started. In this post-pandemic time, we're called to grow and to renew ourselves in divine love. That's what we're being called to. So imagine that each of us has, because we have a divine heart. And it's an identity that we share. We not only align with ourselves in love and connect to love, but we recognize that we are love. That's big. We are love. Take that into your heart. And now take a deep breath. And exhale. Take another deep breath, and as you do, I want you to feel that breath travel deep into the core of your being. Let it travel to the place where hope and faith dance together. And take this next breath and let it travel to the place where the longing of your heart calls you to a spiritual renewal. On your next breath, and just breathe in normally, imagine your divine heart begins to glow within you. Just imagine that it just starts to glow. And with every heartbeat, it's inviting you deeper into unity, connection, and belonging. And as you connect with the rhythm and the pattern of your breathing, that gentle ebb and flow, you start to reiterate for yourself what you already know, that God is in, through, and as you and each and every one of us, collecting the many tears, much like Kuan Yin, collecting those tears to use as spiritual Windex, washing away that accumulated dust and grime. The grit of grief, the grit of loneliness or sorrow, separation. God is asking you, are you ready for a spiritual rebirth? And God asks another question. Are you ready to connect more fully to the love we all share? God is asking, can you embrace that indwelling love, both individually and collectively? Can you love yourself so that you can love others more fully? And in quiet contemplation, we know that when we are in the flow of divine love, we realize this love has been here all along. And when you answer yes to that divine flow, much like the garden hose I spoke about, you take your foot off that and you open your heart and you become open to the hearts of others. So take another deep breath. Breathe in hope and gratitude, and exhale. And on this next breath, take a deep breath and know that you are breathing in grace and compassion. And exhale. And on this breath, know that you are breathing in divine love. And with one more deep breath, I invite you to say quietly to yourself in spirit, I am ready for spiritual renewal. And just allow yourself to gently bring your consciousness back. There we go. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke, thank you, Rainer Maria Rilke, wrote, I want to unfold. Let no place in me hold itself closed, for where I am closed, I am false. I want to stay clear in your sight. I love that. I want to stay clear in your sight. Our Science of Mind text says, behind the individual is the universal. Page 30, by the way, 30.2. Oh, behind the individual is the universal, which has no limits. In this concept alone lies the possibility of eternal and endless expansion. We all use the creative power of the universal mind every time we use our own mind, right? I gave that theater example earlier in the sermon when I talked about, Shakespeare put something on paper in the 17th century. And can you imagine that in 2022, those words are being created in so many ways? I got to experience Romeo and Juliet this summer. Same words, set in the context of a modern-day country club where both Romeo and Juliet were women. And guess what the families were worrying about, right? 17th century, 2022. And it all started in the mind of a person, but in the mind of God, right? Who became the channel, the funnel for that. So expansiveness is about opening our heart and extending that open-hearted stance to the world. That's why we're here. We open our hearts and then we extend it to the world. That's who we are. That's our call as religious scientists, right? Our heart, and she didn't even know, she didn't write this religious science, but our heart's capacity is to love beyond what we can grasp. I mean, him, so easy. My little 10-pound puppy, absolutely. My 3.5-year-old granddaughter, it's so easy. It's so easy to love what we can grasp. But can I still love the person that I'm yelling at when I watch the TV at night? We talk about it. We talk about it in our communities. We're a welcoming and inclusive community. I never heard but after that. Well, except that's not what we teach. It's not who we are. So we depend on the guidance of spirit to reveal to us in the depths of our heart the way to really love and be loved, no matter, even when it's not that easy to grasp, when it's not that easy to wrap our heads around. That's our call. Can I love that person that frustrates the ever-loving you-know-what out of me, right? The only limits on our heart, much like everything else, are the ones that we place there, right? Intimacy is a living, growing experience. It's something that we allow and encourage. We can't force it, We will be an intimate, loving community because I'm the minister and I said so. Yeah, how's that working? Doesn't work with the 3-year-old. And it doesn't work with the 17-year-old, so it's really not workable at all. So opening and expansion happens. What's your first guess? How does that happen? Say it louder. It starts with you. Letting go. Showing up. Being aware. There's no wrong answers. Saying yes, being present. How about trust? That's where I'm going to go. We're going to go there. Opening and awareness happens through deepening trust, by being gentle with our hearts and by moving closer to what we love. See, I can't say, this is hard to not look around. I can't, oh wait, I have one of these. No. Oh, I can walk, I can move. I can't say that I stand for love. Oh wait, not them. That doesn't work. So that, which I have to try to wrap my head around, I need to move closer to it. I need to be able to say, tell me what it is, because even in our communities, anybody here have a family? Anybody grow up in a family? Or do you have a family? Do you get along all the time, 24/7, sunshine, lollipops, and roses? No. But what do? I mean, I'm not talking about toxicity and abuse, all right? I want to be very clear, because that has to have very clear boundaries. Even forgiveness can happen, but it doesn't mean that you put yourself in danger or back into that situation, right? I have a niece that I adore. And when she first moved to California, she didn't have anybody here. And I took her in. I said, of course you can stay with us. You know, here's the rules. You either have to go to school or get a job. One of the two. That's the first rule. Second rule, there is no drug use in my home. None. I had that all through my childhood. I told the story at the talk this morning, in case you weren't here, that my sister was a heroin addict. She started running away at 13. So I lived with the phone ringing at 4 o'clock in the morning. When my parents would get the call, we found her. And they'll say, well, where do we go? And the cops said, no, we'll come and get you. You're not going where she is by yourself. And yes, her picture, there were no milk cartons then, but her picture was all over the store windows. So I told that earlier. So I told that to my niece. And it turns out she did have an addiction. And we ended up at the emergency vet a couple of times, and I couldn't figure out why. And it turned out that whatever was on her was impacting our dog. And we had to make the hard decision, you can't stay here anymore. So some boundaries are hard, and I said, I'll help you. I will help you, I will pay for rehab, but you can't stay here. You need to be clean and then come back. And she's amazing today, by the way. I was going through Holmes Institute when that was happening. God will bring you through it. So we're gentle with our hearts, we move closer to what we love, but finding the depths of trust, that's a tough one. I confess that was a tough one for me, because integrity and being impeccable with my word is very important to me. Now, I'm not that great with myself, right? So like if I say, well, starting tomorrow, exercise bike, this much time a day, this is my food plan, you know, and then it's like, well, that didn't happen. But if I give you my word, you absolutely can count on that. And if I mess up, I am far tougher on myself than you would ever be, because it matters to me. My integrity, my word matters. So when a trust is broken, it's very hard for me to bounce back. It doesn't mean that I don't, by the way. Please understand that. I'm not rigid, I'm not unforgiving, but it's a tough one for me. So but yet it's at the foundation. Trust is at the foundation of every strong relationship, right? My first husband was unfaithful. Guess what happened the first time? He didn't show up when he was supposed to. I actually was engaged to him and gave the ring back. My son, who was only 19 at the time, talked me off the ledge. 19. And he was like, no, you need to step back. You know, he was traveling, flights were delayed, you know, I mean, I knew it was ridiculous. Did you ever get so bent out of shape that you're actually outside of your body looking at yourself saying, what the heck are you doing? But you know that what you're doing is not rational, but you're just so, you know, whatever. So that happened. Clearly I got over it. But he knows what the deal breakers are, right? But when we open our hearts like that, and we trust God, that allows us to get closer, right, to others. And it allows us, by the way, to get closer to our deepest self. That's an important thing. Like, do I trust myself? That's a big deal sometimes. Yeah, I spend a lot of time with this 3.5-year-old on the playground. Not a lot, but more time than I ever did when I was a kid. So she is fearless, fearless. She's 3.5 years old, and nobody has told her, well, you can't do that. You know, I hold my breath, right? Because I am the least athletic person I know. Like, if you toss a ball at me, I duck. I'm like, no. I had a whole lifetime of being chosen last for anything because I spent the first 8 years pretty ill, right? So all that formative stuff, that didn't happen, right? And I am vigilant that I don't pass any of that on to her. So like we go to a playground and she sees like this rock wall. She's 3 and it's got like the little footholds kind of thing. And I'm like, sure, yes, go climb it. But and I'm like right there. But I think that's God, right? And then if she jumps, if she falls down, she gets up. Have you ever seen a baby when a baby first starts to walk? Right? And they're unsteady and you're so excited and then they fall and they might even cry a little bit, but they don't stay there. There's very few infants that say, no, I tried that walking thing once, I fell, I'm not doing that again. No, they get up, they do it again, and I think that's our experience with the divine. The divine keeps picking us up. And if we listen, we can hear, you're okay. I got you, I'm with you. And the funny thing is, when she falls, she turns around, she says, I'm okay, I'm fine. She's 3, she goes, I'm okay, I'm fine. Because that's what she's learned. You're okay, you're fine. Here, do you want a Mickey Band-Aid? Yes, it's a big deal, it's fun, right? But I think that's how Spirit is with us. I think Spirit's like tugging at our pants, saying, listen. I think Spirit's going, listen to me. You're okay, I got you, right? And so we dust ourselves off, we keep playing, we learn to trust again and again and again, but we have to stay in relationship with the divine to trust that intimacy, right? I do. And the other thing is we can't stay on the sidelines. You can't have a marriage without being in the marriage, right? You can't, I know some people think they can call the shots from the cheap seats, but how much attention are you going to give that, right? And sure, it's easy, to call the shots from the cheap seats. Brene Brown. I want people on the field getting bloody and battered with me, right? And then I'll know that you're in it. Then I'll know you're in the game. Not people who are going to call the shots from the cheap seats. You can't be married without being in the marriage. You can't be a friend without being in the friendship. You can't belong to a community without being in the community, right? You can't swim without being in the water. That's kind of fun. I love swimming, I just don't want to get wet. What? I don't want to be in the water, what? Trust depends on participation, and you can't participate from the sidelines from the outside, right? You have to be in it. So this is what divine love teaches us. Divine love is always offering itself to us. Ernest Holmes and our new thought teachers before and since have been imploring us, really, sometimes begging us to recognize that we are this love. It's not something that we have to hope for, pray, oh please, We are it. Spirit is contained in everything in our hearts and the world around us. And even when we leave the playground with our skinned knees, our bruised shins, battered egos. My son had stitches in his eyebrow. He doesn't even have a full eyebrow anymore. Twice. The pediatrician actually said, I'm really glad I know this family. I went, I know, You get him a Tonka fire truck, and it was the fire truck that had the little hose attached. So you could actually, no, he's not going to hook it up to the hose and let water come out of it. He's going to swing it in the air and conk himself in the eyebrow, and then gush blood. I'm like, oh, that was fun. That's exactly what I wanted you to do with that toy. So when that happens, we're still encouraged to trust what's happening beneath the surface, because there is the soil of our souls, and it's collecting that. It's the core of our being. It's never absent. So I want you to take a moment, because we are going to be interactive. I don't tend to talk for 90 minutes. I want you to take a moment first to consider, what does trust look like to you, right? And does an image come to mind? Like if you had to have an analogy or an image, just take a second to think about it. And then whenever you're ready, just shout something out. What does it look like to you, or what image comes to mind when you think about it? I just want to hear from a couple of people. Susan, go ahead.
It's an image of the heart. Like, there's a fierceness to that love. It's not like a ballad. There's a fierceness to a loving heart. It feels like a warrior, a soldier. And then I think about, we talk about unconditional love. And I find in my imagery that I'm trying to get my feet in unconditional love and see what that really feels like. It's difficult.
Yeah.
That is a hard one. You know, there's an unconditional love that floats through my body tempo. And I don't know really
Say the last thing, but
how to live that.
okay. Yeah. It's a heck of a challenge. No, not her. Sorry. Divine trust. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. I love the net. Thank you. The baseball, I was scared because I'm like. However, here's the other thing though. That's a beautiful image because have you ever seen somebody get a brand new glove and what they do to that glove, how they oil it and how they treat the leather? I remember my brother and boy, God help us if we touched his baseball glove. But the way they treat it and they oil it and bend it, sometimes they bend it and they put piles of books on top of it to get it more supple kind of thing. It's such a, and then this happens. So that's fantastic. I'm going to hear from Catherine and then I'm going to do, wait, I need to go to this side of the room.
I grabbed the microphone.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Zoe. Should I have been doing that? That one.
Here we go.
By the way, are we on Zoom? Live stream. Okay. Will you let me know if anybody has comments online? Thank you so much. You can just shout it out. Thank you, Peggy. I'm sorry I forgot about the mic. So can we, there, Catherine.
I've got the mic.
Never give a minister a mic.
True. Okay. Trust. The first thing that jumped into my head was when I was 5 years old, and I wandered away from my grandma's house in New Orleans to go adventuring. And I got lost. And I was tired, and I had no idea where I was. And I simply went to the first house that looked pretty nice, and I walked through the gate and up to the door, knocked on the door, and this older girl, who must have been 15, she had a ponytail, opened the door, and I said, "Hi, I'm lost, can I come in?" And I was brought in, I was fed Cokes and cookies in an air-conditioned house. I wouldn't tell them where I lived or what my name was because I didn't want to go home.
That's fantastic.
But I had absolutely no fear that I would not be taken care of. I trusted totally. And I was 5. When I was 50, it was a lot harder. Oh, was it hard? Yeah. Thank you. Oh, there you go.
Tom, we'll get back to you, Tom.
The first thing that came to me is, wow, I don't know. Then the second thing that came to me was fierce vulnerability.
Say it one more time.
Fierce vulnerability.
Fierce vulnerability. So we're back to fierce again. Where's Susan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Deborah, thank you.
Well, I see trust and faith as interrelated. It's the knowledge that it looks bad now, maybe, but I know that in the end it'll be okay.
One foot in front of the other, so thank you so much. We'll hear from one more. Thanks, Candace.
Okay, the first thing, I also, like Deborah, sort of thought, I don't know, and then a lotus floated into my vision. And then right after that was a vision of two hands intertwined. So for me, the lotus is compassion.
Of course.
And
How does it grow?
How
does
does
it
it
grow,
grow? It
Constance?
grows out of the mud.
That's right.
It has to grow in the mud. Thank God for the mud. Yes. And the hands for me is about I'm not alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want you to take a minute, because it's the time frame. We can't always hear from everyone, but I want you to take a minute to maybe move your seat and go be next to somebody and share. Just take a minute to share with somebody else. What does trust look like? Don't be afraid to move around. Who doesn't have a partner? Who needs a partner? Susan, we're sharing with one another. What does trust look like? What image? Thank you. Thank you, sweetie. Take a moment to thank your partner. Make sure you both had a chance to share.
Audience participation?
What, sweetie?
Any more audience participation?
Probably, yes, probably. But you know, Max can do that, so he'd be happy to be he's been my TA a lot. All right. So, if you can hear me, do this. If you can hear me, do this. Can you tell I've worked in youth ministry? So you may want to stay, because we're going to partner up again, like to share. If you're comfortable, you may want to stay. Please don't leave yet. But you may want to stay with your partner, because we're going to have more sharing opportunity in just a little bit. Or you can go back to your seats and mix it up. Totally up to you. I'll leave it up to you. You're grown-ups. I want to talk a second. We talk about establishing trust, but here's the other thing that has to happen. The second point I want to talk to you about is finding a gentleness of heart. Finding a gentleness of heart will really foster trust, because intimacy, my prayer partner says, into me see, which I love, intimacy. Intimacy grows through gentleness, right? I mean, how easy is it to trust that person who is so kind and loving and gentle, as opposed to, I forgot I sent you guys slides. She's so sharp. I wondered, like, why is everybody looking? So it's so much easier when people are gentle with one another, you know? And I have to cultivate that, right? Love languages, you know the 5 love languages, right? Gifts, acts of service, quality time, words of praise, and I'm probably forgetting the 5th one. And we're very different because mine is acts of service, right? Or quality time, they're kind of tied together. His is words of praise. And I didn't get that a lot growing up because, you know, that Brooklyn hardcore kind of, you know, don't tell her that, she'll get a big head. You know? You know, I come home and say, I got the part in the play, oh my gosh. You know, and then the play would end and my mother would be like, wow, who was that soprano? I'm like, I don't know, but I was the alto, you know. So that love language, right? There has to be some gentleness, and we do it in our words, we do it in our actions, we provide gentleness even in silence. That ministry of compassion, you know, being at the bedside. My mom was a tough lady. It was rough. She was rough. She was rough to the point that when she passed, she had really alienated all of her children. But I had done so much science of mind work and so much therapy. Oh, that house that I could have had. And I recognized what an amazing privilege it was to breathe out of this existence the person that breathed me in. Being at that bedside, nothing in the past mattered. And we had done a lot of healing by that point, right? I recognized the privilege of breathing out of this life the person that breathed me into life. And that was some amazing power, and it was silence, because she died of the effects of Alzheimer's, right? She caught pneumonia, and that was it. That was the end of it. Her body went shut down. So that gentleness, whether it's words, actions, or silence, allows us to continue to expand and cultivate that heart of love, right? There has to be gentleness. And I like to watch how people cultivate it, by the way, because if you're paying attention, you can see it. You can see it when people hug. You know, I had someone come up to me and tell me that they just lost their mom last Friday. And I immediately, you know, I went in. I was like, can I hug you, please? You know, the wiping away of tears. You know, who are the people that did that garden? Right? The gentleness of trimming roses and working in the garden, caring enough to be that gentle with flowers. Okay, another confession. My house is a hospice center for plants. I'm sorry. I have a lot of gifts. That's not one of them. I am the Dr. Kevorkian of plant life. They come there to die. I actually started developing resentment when people would give me a plant because I'm like, oh, I have to keep something else alive. I already raised my kids. Now I have this thing that I'm responsible for. So I know it's probably a terrible confession. Please don't judge me, but I needed to be honest. But I love people that can do that. When we first got our house, there was a woman at our center who is remarkable. I wish you could see her garden. I covet that garden. So I asked her, she offered, she said, you know, if you ever want any help, like, I said, well, there's roses, and they're awesome because, like, they just kind of, I water them, but that's all I have to do. They're really, you know, they're awesome. I killed a jade plant. Come on, it's a cactus. I said, and then I have this other plant that's really thriving. She came to the house, she said, honey, that's not a plant. You need to rip that up. I was cultivating a weed. I was like, oh, Lord. But again, there's a gentleness. And people who do flower arranging, you should see him decorate a cake. Holy cow, he gets out all the different tips and the piping bag. And then he does this thing, and I'm like, that's remarkable. And then my son, who is giant, both my boys are giant, and then here he is. He has a daughter. He was like, please, God, please give me a boy. I was like, nope. He's like, I could do this. And just the two of them together is remarkable. And then this 3.5-year-old, right? So she finishes her lunch, and I stand, she's tall, but she stands up like on this step of the high chair kind of thing, and, while I clean her face or something, and all of a sudden she goes, she takes her hand and brushes my cheek, and she goes, I love you, Nana. Like, nobody taught her to do that. That's the thing, that gentleness, that is our nature. It is our nature to love, it is our nature to give, it is our nature to receive, and I'm not minimizing. That's why I tell you some of these stories about my childhood, because I'm not minimizing abusive backgrounds. I understand that. I understand that there are things that can trigger people. I understand the need to create safety for people to know that, hey, this is a safe space. There's nothing we can't say to one another. I talked to our practitioners yesterday, your practitioners yesterday, and I said, well, they're ours, it's our nation. Can you assume the best? That is such an important question. If you start out assuming the best, then we have something to build on, then we go from there. So if somebody does a misstep, right? Then it's like, well, tell me what was up with that. Was it just a bad day? Is it a process that has to change? I loved when I worked at HP, because I worked with all of these marketing execs. Marketing people are a breed in their own, present company excluded, if any of you are in marketing. But lots of entitlement and stuff, right? So I'm the one that has to do their travel reports and the finance reports and that kind of thing. And I'm telling them, well, I need receipts, and I need you, this is the deadline for your travel reports. And then I finally just exploded one day on my senior VP and loved him. He trusted me and vice versa. There was such a degree of trust. And he said, so here's the question that we have to ask. When people are circumventing a process, is it a broken process, right? Do we have to get together and talk about it? Is the process not working for everybody? He said, or is it somebody that's just being entitled? Because those are two very different things. He said, the first one we can fix. The second one we can fire. And I was like, oh, damn. I was like, well, I don't think it has to be that extreme. But how about we just say, well, from now on, if they're not in by this date, you can tie that back to the company. Thank you for the gift, right? So those are questions that you want to have, but if you're assuming the best, like, hey, maybe our process is bad, right? Maybe it's cumbersome. Maybe it's not working. How can we do it better? Listen to people. Tell us what would work better for you, right? Not just, well, no, that's the way we do it. So first of all, do a quick shout out. What are some ways that you think we can cultivate gentleness, or you can cultivate gentleness in your life? What are some ways you can cultivate gentleness? I'm a kitty, you're a kitty. Who said that? Who said slowing down? Tricia, thank you. See myself in the other person, taking a breath. I'm telling you, hang out with kids, seriously. Or adults who act like children, that's always fun. Oh, dogs. I'm sorry. My dog thinks it's my child, so I might have been responsible for that. Talk kindly to yourself. Would you tolerate someone talking to a family member the way you talk to yourself sometimes? Being aware of your self-talk. And how about the way we talk to each other? Can we speak kindly? Can we listen with a kind, expansive heart? Catherine. Oh, girl, every day. Every day. Who am I kidding? Probably every 30 minutes. Yes. Were you going to say something else, love? Beth. Beth, right? Bonnie. Yeah. Okay. I know, I thought you had your hand up again. I thought, yes. Be patient. Tell me your name. Vicky, thank you. Be patient.
Senator, a person needs to live without expectation, or live in anticipation of but not expectation. I think when I live in expectation of you, I'm setting you up.
And you.
Yes, of course. Yes.
And you.
Because it'll go back.
Do you ever go out for a really good meal because your friend raved about a restaurant or somebody told you? We are foodies, clearly, but but my kid, even my family members know I'm not gifts. I prefer an experience, right? Yesterday here, somebody, I can't remember how, I think it was because we talked about it last time, but they understand that I have a fondness for Irish whiskey. But by the way, I'm a cheap date, like, 2 drams, I'm done. And dark chocolate. And they showed up yesterday with a lovely bottle of Irish whiskey and a bar of Ghirardelli dark chocolate. Right? So when I say I'm not a fan of gifts, what I mean is I don't need my kids to buy me a bathrobe or a pair of slippers, because odds are I'm going to take it back. So him, do not ever buy me clothes. Love you. No. Jewelry's okay, but clothes, no. But have you ever gone out to a meal and you were like so looking forward to it, and then you get halfway through and it's like, wow, this tastes like sadness and disappointment, And so, I wanted, caviar and foie gras, and it's sadness and disappointment. So we also set ourselves up when we have those expectations, right? Shared agreements. That's amazing. Co-creating things together, that's amazing. That's how I want to live. I'm the kind of person I like to put, Post-its up on the wall and colored dots and that. They used to call it brainstorming, but I'm sure there's a new word for it now that I'm not up on. But, to me, it's co-creation. What can we come up with together? Because that's when the imagination... I have the story, I told this sermon many times, because I'm a fan of Disneyland. Anybody? Well, actually, all things Disney, but if you go to Disneyland, there's an attraction that's called the World of Color. And the World of Color, they literally built like an outdoor lake. But how about Vegas? Anybody ever see the Bellagio Hotel in Vegas with all those things in the water that shoot up? Right. So the World of Color is like that on steroids. And while you're standing there watching it, and the music plays, and it changes color, but as the water comes up, like a fountain, it literally forms a screen, and they project images onto water. So you're standing there looking at it, and the stampede in The Lion King? It comes stampeding across the water. And then there's Mickey doing the Fantasia thing, and I'm sitting there, I think it's on purpose, that all of those engineers are called Imagineers. That, in fact, it's another summer program. We did it in San Jose called I, the Imagineer, right? Can you be an Imagineer in your own life? That's a side note. But I thought, the first thing I thought of was, what was that staff meeting like? No, seriously, what was it like when somebody walked in, this man or woman or a team, said, hey, listen, You know the Bellagio, right? They got the thing with the water. I want to do that. We're going to build a lake in the middle of Disneyland, and we're going to put in like 50,000 of these water things that shoot up into the air. And it's like, okay, and then what happens? Well, there's music, and they change color. It's like, that it? So it's just a fountain? No. We're going to project images. Oh, so there's going to be projectors? No. We're going to project them on the water. Right? But somebody said yes. Right? Someone said yes to that. And every time we get to go, and it's been years, it's really been a long time. Well, plus it's like, now it costs half your mortgage to go, but the kids are talking about going in January. Because it'll be the 3-year-old's first time, she'll be almost 4. So every time I go there, I can't help but think, what was that like? But guess what that was? That was the mind of the one, waiting for someone to be that channel. Right? The cure for cancer, that's somewhere. It's somewhere, it's already there. It could be in this room, right? And who is the person that's going to be the conduit for that which is already done in the universe, right? Alzheimer's, racial justice, it's already done in the mind of God. All of the things, the disharmony, God's up there going, like the toddler, tugging, pay attention. So if you're able, please stand and just find a spot in the room. Don't go too far. Just find a spot where you can stand. And if you want to stay seated, please stay seated and feel yourself in the chair, because you can do that too. I want you to have this experience that you may be standing alone, right? But you're still close enough to feel part of the group. Right? You're standing alone, but you're still part of the group. And can you feel your feet or your fanny, bottom? What do we tell the 3-0? Bottom. Can you feel your bottom planted solidly in the chair or on the ground? Right? So I want you to be both strong, feel the strength of your stance, your feet, and yourself firmly planted. But I also want you to be soft. And you don't have to close your eyes like if you have vertigo or anything like that, but if you can, please do so, and I want you to reflect on this question for a moment. It's a 2-parter. What do you stand for, and what do you stand in? I'm going to give you an example. I stand for compassion. I stand in integrity. I stand for compassion. I stand in integrity. And whenever you think you know, find someone to share it with. Walk to them wherever they are and find someone to share it with. But put your hand up so that they know you're ready to share. If you're part of our virtual community, I don't know if there's a chat feature. You're welcome to chat it. We're almost done. Cool. And when you're done, you're welcome to take a seat, but be next to somebody because we're going to have another sharing in a minute or two. And we're going to be done at 3:30, by the way, just so you know. Gentleness of heart. All right. Hey, Alice. Thank you. I don't want to forget to say thank you for being back there, and I don't know who's next to you. Tricia. Thank you both. All right. Anybody want to share what you heard? Either what, well, don't share what somebody else said. Anybody want to share what came up for them? I stand in. Anyone? Bueller. Oh.
I stand for social justice, but I stand in love.
Ike. I stand for social justice and I stand in love. One more time, yes, Susan. I stand for social justice. I know, it's a hard name for me to remember. It's been a long 2 days. I stand for social justice and I stand in love. Thank you. I want to be sure that our virtual community can hear, because if I repeat it back, we don't have to make Zoe run around. Anyone else want to share? Yes, Deborah.
I stand in spirit. I stand for freedom.
I stand in spirit and I stand for freedom. Beautiful. Who else? Yes. Thank you, Bonnie. I stand for compassion. I stand in love. Alice. I stand in kindness and I stand for truth. So this gentleness of heart reminds us that we are enfolded in God's love and we can treat each other with kindness and care. It really costs nothing. I spoke to my community on September 25th, just 2 weeks ago. Those poor babies. I've been with them for 21 years. And I grew up in Science of Mind there, right? And in one sermon, in 25 minutes, I told them what had happened to my son. That he had an addiction we didn't know he was struggling with. And he started to embezzle money. Because of COVID, this all came out in 2020. By the way, he turned himself in. He knew he had gone too far down the rat hole and that he needed help. He immediately went into therapy. I told him I'll pay whatever it takes. I used to tease you as a kid, I'll pay for your therapy. When you get older, look what happened. He had a group of friends that were remarkably kind. One of his pals, because he studied martial arts for quite a while, and one of his friends from the dojo said, you come live here, because his marriage ended. You come live here. Of course, he didn't have a job, and then he had gotten another job, but then they found out, and he lost that job, and then he went to work in a nonprofit. And he didn't tell them, but he wasn't handling money or anything. It was like a 24-hour hotline. And it was a kind of nonprofit that sends people to resources. And it really was so good because it opened his heart so much. He hasn't forgiven himself. That's going to take a while. But on September 25th, this has been going on since 2020, and because of COVID, all the court cases got postponed. It's a nonviolent crime. There was no rush. So he wore an ankle bracelet. Another friend of his put up the bail bond. And even his parole officer would let him come to visit. So we got used to, okay, this is doable. You know, he can make restitution and you know, live his life and be the dad that he always wanted to be. But then the reckoning came. Because he pleaded guilty, he waived a trial, he said no. And in June of this year, he had to report to prison. So he went to Maricopa County Jail, and then his trial was in August. I told you guys that, August 17th, and I spoke at his trial to the judge. I had already written a letter and stuff. His brother wrote a letter. And he's serving 4 years in a minimum security because in the state of Arizona, any felony has a mandatory sentence. You must serve time for any felony regardless. One more reason why I just love Arizona, but no one in my community knew that happened. No one. And ministers are not immune to the occasional unkindness. It can happen. And I never missed a beat. I served my community all through COVID, one foot in front of the other. What happened with my son, my family passing, and on September 25th, I told them everything. And I also told them I was leaving. Not in a huff, but I had reached my zone of excellence. I don't know if you've ever read Gay Hendricks, but I know that there's something else. And it wasn't achievable any longer where I was. And I have no idea. I mean, I can be a minister here, I cannot be a minister here, but I knew that was done. It had nothing to do with OCSL. It had nothing to do with candidating. I knew that I was done, I just didn't know when I was going to tell people. Because David and I had worked together too for 21 years, David Bruner and Susan Overland, and the new minister coming in needed a clean slate. I wanted to remove any possibility that anybody would try to bypass her and come to me, so that things could stay the same, because we don't want it to stay the same, right? And so, the reason I tell you that story was because of the people who came up to me afterwards in tears and with hugs, who said things like, "I'm so sorry for what transpired between," and there weren't a lot of people, maybe 3, in 2.5 years, that's not bad. But who came up and said, "I didn't know." And all I could say was, it wasn't my story to tell at the time. First of all, I wasn't going to talk about it before the trial. Second of all, I wanted my son's permission, by the way. I have his permission. But the ability to be able to talk to a community and say, it's not a trite saying when we say be kind, because you never know what people are going through. And it was such a powerful lesson for them. And I didn't set out for that. I just set out to finally, I'm okay with being vulnerable. Well, clearly, we kind of figured that out, Susan. But I think it's just so important for people to understand the depth of a person's faith and trust in spirit. That I can stand here after these past 2.5 years and know that God is all there is. That there is only one life, that life is God's life, it's mine, it is my son's life, it is perfect just the way that it is and just the way that it is not. But that gentleness of heart is what reminds us constantly, I'm going to repeat it, that we are enfolded in God's love and we can treat each other with kindness and gentleness and care no matter what is happening, no matter what. We can stand for a world that works for everyone, but we can do so kindly and compassionately. If we can't do that, why are we here? We're religious science, for heaven's sakes. So I want you to take 3 gentle breaths, gentle ones this time, because that's a lot. I need to take 3 breaths. And I want you to feel that air as it flows through your body with each inhale and exhale. And I want you to actually see if you can invite gentleness. Can you feel gentleness coming into your body? What does it feel like? Allow spirit, your higher wisdom self, whatever you call the thing itself, to complete the following sentence. I experience gentleness when. Again, allow whatever wants to emerge, whether it's a feeling, an image, just let it emerge. And when you have it, put your hand up so that people know they can share with you. Because we don't want to interrupt somebody's reflection if they don't quite have it yet. What does gentleness feel like, or what image comes up? You can even ask, like, where do I feel that in my body? I always feel it right here, like. Who wants to share with Rob? So Robert, Tom, Zoe is ready to share. Peggy. Yeah, just turn to somebody and share. Max, do you want to go to Tom so he doesn't always have to get up? He's got up. Sorry, honey. Take about another minute to make sure everybody's had a chance to share, and take 1 more minute to wrap up. And please keep thanking your sharing partners. If you can hear me, do this. Oh, it's like magic. Okay. I'm not going to take group sharing at this time because I want to be sure I get to the third and last final thing. If we go to the next slide, Alice. The next thing is about the third point and final point is becoming willing to get closer. There has to be a willingness to get closer. By the way, I have a handout for all of you for all of the talking points. It would have been nice if I told you before I saw you scribbling frantically. So sorry. I'm not new, I promise. I did graduate. I know it does help. Yeah. So I read a story. It's in this book that I fell in love with post-pandemic. I read a story about a 90-year-old woman who ended every day by asking God, "Did I let you love me today?" I know. It's in the handout, I promise. Did I let you love me today? I thought it was beautiful and profound, and it stirred something so deep in me that even now when I say it, I've been reading this for a couple of weeks, because I think so many people, all of us, myself, us included, are desirous of an intimacy never before experienced. That love that touches our deepest longing. I said it earlier in my talk today about wanting to be cherished, wanting to know that if I didn't wake up tomorrow, it would matter to somebody. I really did. I grew up, it was kind of like a Jerry Springer episode. To the point, I remember being a young kid and laying in bed at night thinking, my real family's gonna come. Someday my real family is gonna come. I know. You know, and when I was really little, I was, what was that, stork drinking? But anyway, that's a joke. But becoming willing to get closer, in order to do that, we have to examine what is it that moves us towards closeness, and what is it that pulls us away, right? For any one of us to experience, again, this is all free therapy, by the way. I learned a lot of this from my therapist years ago. What has to happen, and even in our Science of Mind teaching, I can't recognize that. I can't get that closeness to somebody if I don't feel like I'm worthy of it. Do you really understand your worth? Do you know to whom you belong? Do you know who and whose you are? That is so deeply important. We have to know our worth. We have to love ourselves. There are so many people, I counsel so many people in the thing that they want. This is a hoot, by the way, if you are looking for a significant other. There's all these dating sites, right? And you go out there and you have like a profile, and this is what I'm looking for. Even my own therapist, years ago, before I met Max or heard of Ernest Holmes, said, make a list of what you want in a partner. And I did the assignment, but I made it so hard because I thought this isn't even going to be possible. Right? This, Jesus doesn't want this job. So, but the second part of the exercise, he said, now you're going to write a list and tell me what you bring. I was like, what? So those of you who are seeking a significant other, you can go ahead and make the list of what you're looking for and put all physical, oh, you're scaring me, Dora. You can put all the physical stuff aside, I mean, it's one thing to say, please, gainfully employed, but, height, size, eye color, let's eliminate that for a minute. What do you really want? Because one of the things I put on my list, I want someone who is so aware of God that we could be out taking a walk, and in the middle of a walk, they stop and say, look at that bird. Look at that color. Who does that? Where did that come from? That has to be God, right? I actually wrote that down. I wish I would have saved the paper, but I turned it in like a homework assignment. He doesn't quite do that, but he can watch a movie and tell you everything that the film crew got wrong about that 1969 car that's on that screen. First of all, that color wasn't available in 1969, and the dashboard is wrong because the odometer, and I just hit pause. Are we good? Okay. But you heard him laugh, and you've heard him pray and speak. And there is absolutely no doubt that he knows who and whose he is. And then he helped me find that out. And we encounter selfish people sometimes. I'm going to start to talk faster. But what if every act of selfishness or harm is a cry for love? What if? What if you could just take a minute before you lash out, before you get angry, to think, oh, how did I let God love me today? Oh, this is my chance. So God sent me this. Right? You ever see the movie Evan Almighty? The most profound line in that comedy was when he's really ranting and raving at God. I asked you for this, I asked you for this. And God says, I don't grant wishes. I'm paraphrasing. He says, it's not like I'm a genie. You prayed for peace, and I sent you opportunities to be peaceful. You prayed for love, and I sent you opportunities to love others. Right? This is what it is. God isn't a genie. You know, it's not, that's not how God works. When we pray for peace, God's going to put something on the news that makes me shout at my television, and then I look at him and I go, all right, turn it off, and let's go back to being religious scientists, because, you know, again, every ounce of minister just left my body. And I ask in my community, you know, science of mind isn't for the faint of heart, by the way. This is work. This is work. It's really, all right, I apologize in advance. It's easy for some ministers, not in religious science, other denominations, to stand there and tell you how bad and awful and wrong certain people are, or certain ways of being are, or how this is wrong and that's sinners and sinners this, and there's only one way for the kingdom of heaven. Well, you know what? This is it. This is the kingdom. I don't want to live my life for something that's going to happen after I die. What the hell is that? Oh. Sorry. God sends me news headlines and those people so that I and you might practice your practice and walk your talk. So what is it in me that needs to heal? What is it in me that needs to heal so that I might be able to ask, or when God says, I might be able to ask God, did I let you love me today? And be able to answer, yes, I did. I sure did. I loved so much today. I let you love me so much today. I let that person live when they cut me off on the freeway. Right? I loved you so much that I was really patient with the person in Kingman County Jail who couldn't answer my question, why was the book sent back? It was a book about religious science written by Ernest Holmes. Why did it get sent back? Because I sent my son, he said, could you send me some books? Well, sure. How about Can We Talk to God? You know, how about this thing called you? I bet if I sent him a Bible, you'd let it in. Sorry. So yes, I let God love me through that conversation. Being loved is an act of freedom. It's a choice that we can make again and again and again, and it creates an opening in us, and it is a prerequisite for caring for others. Because if you can't let God love you today, you're not going to let you love other people today. So call to action. Psalm 139. Handouts, because I want to be sure you have this. I don't want to forget to hand them out now that I made them. Psalm 139, you knit me together in my mother's womb. Imagine something that powerful and loving. You knit me together in my mother's womb. And I would love for you to repeat that several times, not now, but in your reflection, in your journaling. And then ask God, did I let you love me today? That's your homework. It's not that bad, it's pretty easy. And I want to close that reminding you that simply, and I'm going to close with a prayer, simply by seeking to be closer to God, intimacy with the divine grows. All you need to do to be intimate, to have an experience of intimacy, is to seek to be closer to God. It's easy, right? We commit to opening our heart and expanding its capacity. That's when we get love. Because love is infinite. We just have to expand our capacity. Reverend Jerry said it last week. How big can you think? Right? What's your mental equivalent? We're always discovering love in all of our relationships, our spouse, our partner, our families, our children, and most certainly in our communities. As we open to the divine, we discover what holds us back, what makes us want to hide our heart. But with God's gentle hand, we can learn to come closer to love. And ultimately, we remember that we're living infinite love. You have incarnated as you to love as only you can. I'm already taken. Max is already taken. Deborah is already taken. So is Susan. They have to incarnate as themselves to be that unique individual. We're religious science. You'll hear it over and over and over again from me. We are religious science. I encourage you to read Ernest's last sermon, his Sermon by the Sea. We are religious science. Who better to take on the mantle of expansiveness? Really, who? We have the technology, the faith, the philosophy, the way of life. It's up to us to claim our heritage, to be loved, to give love, to receive love, and to live love. There's not only one way that this manifests, by the way. There's the experience we're having in each moment, and you have to honor that. This is not about spiritual bypass, okay? Because people can be a little too people-y sometimes, okay? So honor what you feel, but don't get stuck in trying to arrange things the way you think it should be. Don't get stuck there. Remember scripture, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It doesn't say, yes, though I got to the valley of the shadow of death, I built a condo, I invited neighbors in, I told all the people to jump on the In and Awful bandwagon with me. You know, I planted flowers, they died. Well, my house. And when we're living within the Spirit, we see that there's more life outside of our assumptions. We can reply to God's call with, here I am. Use me. That was amazing today. Here I am. That's Samuel. Samuel and Eli. 1 Samuel chapter 3, verses 2 through 9. Here I am, Lord. And I'm going to pray. Thank you. Whew. Only 1 minute over. I have a handout for everybody. We can either pass them out or you can grab wood on the way out. You can leave extras. Okay. So there is a poem. Sometimes I just like to experiment because I think we've had so much beautiful prayer today. There's a poet whose name is David Whyte, W-H-Y-T-E. Yeah. And the name of this poem is called The True Love. And I'm going to make that be our closing prayer. So if you just get comfortable for a moment. David wrote, "There is a faith in loving fiercely the one who is rightfully yours." And imagine that he's not talking about romance, by the way. Imagine he's talking about the love of God. There's a faith in loving fiercely the one who is rightfully yours, especially if you have waited years, and especially if part of you never believed you deserved this love and this beckoning hand held out to you this way. I'm thinking of faith now and the testaments of loneliness and what we feel when we are worthy in this world. Years ago in the Hebrides, I remembered an old man who walked every morning on the gray stones to the shore of baying seals, who would press his hat to his chest in the blustering salt wind and say his prayer to the turbulent Jesus hidden in the water. And I think of the story of the storm and everyone waking and seeing the distant yet familiar figure far across the water calling to them, and how we are all preparing for that abrupt walking and that calling and that moment we have to say yes. Except it will not come so grandly, so biblically, but more subtly and intimately in the face of the one you know you have to love. So that when we finally step out of the boat toward them, we find everything holds us and everything confirms our courage. And if you wanted to drown, you could, but you don't. Because finally, after all this struggle and all these years, you simply don't want to anymore. You've simply had enough of drowning. And you want to live and you want to love, and you will walk across any territory and any darkness, however fluid and however dangerous, to take the one hand you know belongs in yours. Amen. Thank you, my beloveds. I pray the time was worth it for you. Be well. Know that your journey is blessed. Your search is blessed. Your choice is blessed. It's all God and it's all good.